Mama. A word that we all know, a word some of us hear 1,000 times a day, and some are anxiously waiting for.
It's a title accompanied by immense joy, deep loss, and hearty laughter.
I'm Aubrey.
And I'm Marin.
We love mamas, and we love your strength and your sacrifice. We honor your easy days and the days where you hide in a closet.
Because we have them too.
We know that moms need moms, and that's where we come in.
And the best part is, you can show up in your messy buns and sweatpants and we'll never know.
In fact, we're probably in ours too.
We hear you and we want to connect with you. This is your community.
So welcome to our sisterhood.
Welcome to our circle.
Welcome to the mamahood.
Okay, so we are so excited to have Sarah Powers from the Mom Hour podcast on our show. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks, Marin. Hey, guys. Happy to be here.
We love Sarah. We have had her on, Dallin and I had her on our podcast, and Aubrey saw her at Alt Summit. We just love you. We want to be your best friend in real life.
Well, thanks. I feel like podcasting is this kind of friendship, so I'm excited
totally
for
is.
you guys and the mamahood, and yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, tell us a little bit about you and your family, and then also about the Mom Hour, just briefly, so that we can catch up our listeners on everything you're doing.
Sure. Absolutely. I live in Southern California in Orange County, and I am married and have 3 kids. They are, this time of year, 2 are about to have a birthday. So right this minute, they are 6, 8, and 10. But the 8 and 10 are about to turn 11 and then 9. So it's this kind of nice time of year where they're like stepping stones. So kindergarten, 3rd grade, and 5th grade. And we, like I said, we live in Southern California. I have made podcasting my almost full-time job over the last few years. So I guess we'll get into that and the Mom Hour. But I have been everything from staying at home full-time to doing some freelance writing and editing on the side over the years. So I always say I've kind of had a foot in each of the stay-at-home mom, work from home mom, work a little bit, work a lot from home, and over the years. And as my kids have gotten older, that's kind of evolved. So the Mom Hour is a weekly parenting podcast that we launched 4 years ago. So in the spring of 2015, my co-host is Megan Francis. And she actually got into podcasting in 2012 and was a really early adopter. Oh, wow. And we, like
were they even around back then?
They were around. Yeah. They were like mostly business, tech, or religion podcast. Very male dominated. I mean, it is actually, it is still a male dominated field, but way more even. And you had to listen to them. Most people like synced up a device to a computer with iTunes, back in those days.
That's crazy.
But Megan had a popular blog called The Happiest Mom, which is later The Happiest Home. And I worked with her on that blog. So we knew each other from the blogging space and started a motherhood podcast together in 2015. And Megan has 5 kids. I have 3. Hers range all the way up into young adulthood now. So when we started the show, our kids were 2 to 16, I want to say. Like that was the range. They are now 6 to 21 between the two of us. So we obviously cover a really wide range. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you guys have been doing this forever, and you guys just celebrated your 200th, right? 200th episode.
200 episodes.
It's crazy. Like, your kids have grown from, I know Violet's 6, you said. So, oh my gosh, she was a tiny toddler, and now she's a big kid.
Yeah, it is. It's totally true. And we live in different parts of the country. Our kids are different ages. And so I think our vibe is mostly to encourage moms who are probably a couple years behind us, although we do have moms who listen who have kids our kids' age, but a lot of them are like you guys, looking to see what's next. And, we don't give expert advice. We just kind of talk about our own experiences having been through it, and hopefully with a vibe of, you're doing a good job and it's probably all going to be okay.
That's awesome.
That's perfect. And that's one of the things that I love about the Mom Hour. You've listened to the Mom Hour now, right?
Yeah, love it.
It's so fun. And especially you guys have this little, I want to say like a mini series, because now you've done 4 is it 4 episodes that you've done of the things we shouldn't have freaked out about?
I think there are 3, but you might have looked up and know better than me. I know we have 3. But yeah,
new mom and breastfeeding.
Yes.
And toddler years.
Toddler and starting school. You're right. There are 4. Yeah. So, pretty early on, I think it was probably my idea because I am more of a freaker outer than Megan is. She tends to take things in stride, although she will admit the things that she worried too much about back in the day. But we decided to do an episode where we shared the things that in hindsight, we spent way more time and energy worrying about as brand new moms than in hindsight. Because in the time, it's not like a regret. It's not like you can say, I shouldn't have worried about that, because you did and that was all you knew. But in hindsight, you realize like, oh, that was not quite as big a deal as I made it. Or like, I just spent so much mental time and energy on this one thing, whether it was, choosing a car seat or whatever. And so we went through and shared what our things were, the things we wish we shouldn't have freaked out so much about. And that was really popular. So we followed it up with things we shouldn't have freaked out about, toddler edition. And then we did one on starting school, which really applies. I think we mostly talked about kind of first school experience. So for preschool for a lot of moms, but kindergarten too. And then we did one about breastfeeding. And that was fun. We brought in our resident new mom, Katie, in on that one. So there's actually a third voice, and we all shared just the crazy things we spent lots of time worrying about in those phases that now, with the benefit of hindsight, we can be like, oh, that wasn't a big deal. But that's the thing is, it was a big deal at the time. And I think we try never to minimize whatever stage you're in right now. I, with a 6, 8, and 10-year-olds, am freaking out about things that in 5 or 10 years, I'll be like, well, that was dumb. It wasn't that big a deal. But I have to honor the fact that it's just part of what we do, right? I think you can gain a little bit of perspective and kind of like coach yourself as you get further along, like, hey, maybe this isn't going to be quite that big a deal when I look back on this in a couple of years. But still, I think we have to leave room for that experience of being a freaked out new mom. I don't think any one of us can't take it away from anybody else. It's like the stripe that you have to earn or the badge that you have to earn.
Right.
It's true. Very true.
We all have to go through that like over anxious time with every stage, I feel like. But the things I freaked out with my oldest, I'm not freaking out as much now with my younger kids. So, I mean, it does get better.
It does. And then you find something to freak out about your oldest, and it will be new to you. So you'll do it all over again,
I know, totally.
Well, I think what you guys are doing is just so awesome. Those episodes were really helpful for me, actually, especially the toddler years one, because as I'm just navigating those, man, those are rough.
And you have 2 of them.
Yeah. At the same time. I was just telling Dallin yesterday, I was like, as soon as we get done with something with Hudson, Henry just starts doing it. Like immediately, because they're just a year apart. So I feel like there's really no break from it, but...
Yeah, that's true. It will be interesting. Like the people I know with kids really spaced closely together. I think there is a place where it gets almost easier. Like once you're into elementary school, like a lot of activities and interests are the same. And so hopefully there'll be that side of it too. But yeah, 2 toddlers, 2
That's
1-year-olds.
what we want to hear. That it gets eeasier, right?
Yeah. There's so
Aubrey is just in the first year of navigating Irish twins right now. Like her closely spaced babies are still babies. So
but I mean, there's so much good to it. But yeah, we're excited for those years too.
So we asked our community online what kind of things they're currently freaking out about. And we got literally hundreds of responses because I think it's really easy for moms to come up with what they're freaking out about. And I mean, they ranged from toddlers who won't eat to having mom guilt and babies not hitting their milestones. And we'll probably hit on all of these at some point in the future. But today we've just chosen 3 topics out of the literal hundreds to kind of hit on with you. And those were baby sleep, toddler behavior, and screen time. So, I mean, there's a lot to pack in there.
No kidding. There's like a whole bunch there.
So we asked our community to tell us what kinds of things they're stressing out over in regards to baby sleep. We'll start with that one. And I mean, some of our favorite responses that we got. We'll just look at them really quick.
Some of them said like sleep training, tell us how we can do that. Do you have any advice on as far as that goes?
Oh gosh. Well, that's a really big one. I think, here's what I think about sleep training. I think any one method can work probably if you stick to it. However, this is like a big disclaimer. I did sleep train my babies. There was some amount of crying, although I wasn't comfortable with like a shut the door and cry it out completely. So I did a more modified approach, which I think takes longer. But here's the whole thing. To me, with newborn sleep in particular, to me, I never felt like I was ready to sleep train until my, and I'm talking about myself, not the baby, my daytime sanity and mental health and life were so bad because of bad nighttime sleep that I was willing to kind of go through the tough parts of sleep training because I was no longer a functional, good daytime parent. So my sleep training for my babies was not motivated by, okay, they're 4 months, they should be sleeping through the night, or they're 6 months, or, it was motivated because I was suffering mentally and physically from getting up every 45 minutes to an hour after 4, 5, 6 months. I did not have.
Yeah, till that point of suffering. We have to wait until it's that point before we do something about it, I'm totally the same way.
I kind of think it helps because sleep training, no matter what amount of tears you're going to tolerate, or if you're going to do the thing where you go in and rub their back but don't pick them up, like there's a million kind of graduated approaches you can take if you're not comfortable with like full cry it out. And again, I've done these. But to me, it's hard. It's hard to do it. You got to be on board with your partner. You got to have a plan and stick to it. You have to be willing to accept if it doesn't work or if it takes longer than the book says. Like, it's not really very fun. So for me, I didn't do it until I was really suffering during the day. And I had one baby who slept through the night kind of without me doing much by like 3 months. And I thought, well, that was easy. I'm done. And then she regressed, as many of them do, like 4 or 5 months. And so that was like almost the hardest because it was my first baby. And it was so like, I was like personally offended that she had backtracked so much. Like, what? Like, I thought it never occurred to me. I knew that sleeping through the night would be a big milestone, but nobody ever told me that they will sleep through the night and then not sleep through the night again.
It's like, I thought we had an agreement here.
I know.
Right.
Come on.
Like that was a box I had checked. And so, and then my other 2 babies were so bad right from the beginning that they never even gave me the benefit of that tease. Like they just slept like newborns till they were 4 or 5 months. So,
Kate, I had to ask though, was your baby that slept at 3 months, was she a NICU baby?
No.
Okay. Because babies just come in all different shapes and sizes. And I thought maybe it's the NICU that helped train mine, but she came home from the NICU sleeping. And I'm like, well, either it was that or she's just a better sleeper than the others.
Yeah. I mean, she did a very gradual, 4 hours, then 5, then 6. And it was always a gradual enough improvement that for me as a new mom, I thought, okay, well, I can handle this. Like first I'm getting up 4 times to feed, then it's 3, then 2, then 1. And so at no point was I like, I got to sleep train this baby because it was getting gradually better. Right. My other babies never improved. They slept like newborns until I did something about it. And so I did. And so I think there's lots of great books and resources on sleep training. I think it's more about, I would not recommend that new moms sleep train because they think it's the right thing to do or because they think it will make their babies a great sleeper for the rest of their life or because they think there's some external should. That's not, I think, a great motivation for sleep training because it's so hard. And I think that brings in a lot of feelings of doubt. I think you need to know your baby. You need to know yourself, your partner, your nighttime routine. And when you get to the point like I have where the poor nighttime sleep is really bringing everybody in the family down, including your baby. You can tell a baby who's not rested. They're not happy that they don't know how to self-soothe themselves back. That's when I think, for me, it made sense to look for some structure. I also think a lot of people find a lot of help in sleep coaching or hiring a sleep coach. It's something that 10 years ago I might have said what is a sleep coach? But I'm not above hiring anybody who can help provide the structure and the accountability so that you don't have to think so hard about what you're doing, and maybe give you some tips or some pointers or somebody to kind of bounce ideas off of. I know a lot of moms find that really helpful.
I love that because you're not trying to, you don't expect, okay, my baby's supposed to sleep right now. So because everyone else sleeps at 3 months, so I have to do something about it. You know, I love that you do it at your own pace or whatever you feel like is best for your kids. That's cool.
Yeah, and I think it's also, I know we're going to talk about regression, but it's also, with everything we're going to talk about today, I really recommend you kind of read up on normal development for babies and toddlers, because I think our culture has pushed down this idea of expecting a lot from babies and toddlers before most are developmentally ready. So if you have people telling you that it's developmentally appropriate for a 3-month-old to sleep 12 hours, that may be true for some babies, but it might not be true for your baby. And actually, I think sleep training and putting some structure around sleep can be done, and your baby still may not sleep all the way through the night, but maybe they now have the ability to self-soothe. I hate to say it, but I had one like this. I had one that I sleep trained, and she did get better, and she did have the ability to put herself back to sleep when she woke up. And we did get some better, some better habits and routines with sleep training. She didn't sleep all the way through the night every night till she was 2.5. And that was just how she was. I know. That's like a cautionary tale.
Well, that's our story too, with our oldest.
Yeah. So I think we need to remove some of the expectations of like every 3-month-old should be doing this and every 12-month-old should be doing this, and talk to your pediatrician and read some evidence-based stuff, because you may find that like it's really normal for a lot of babies to not sleep through the night till they're over a year old.
I feel like a lot of people need to hear that, because I remember totally stressing out about that. Like, what am I doing wrong, and what is wrong with my kid?
And we do that, right? We go right to what are we doing wrong, when in fact, like it's such a relief to hear like, oh no, this is just how some kids are. And if you got a bad sleeper, maybe you got an easy kid to potty train, or maybe you got an easy teenager. That's how I always like to think about it, like it all evens out. I don't know how, but I feel like, okay, well, somewhere this is shaved off of somewhere else where I got an easier.
I totally feel that way sleeper, too.
But a good eater or whatever.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. They can't be bad in everything, right?
Right.
And then that regression, like you brought up, this I struggled with so bad, and this was probably the most common thing when we asked what things are you dealing with sleep, is like, what the heck? Why are we regressing at 18 months? This doesn't make any sense. And I remember feeling like, okay, I guess my kid is just like, are they never going to sleep through the night again? Did they just overcome sleeping through the night and now it's over?
Right.
You know?
Well, I will say they will sleep through the night again. As much as a regression, like I said, it feels like a personal insult almost. Like you're like, how could you do this to me? I think in my experience, some kids are just more sensitive when it comes to sleep. And that may be the kid that's a bad sleeper when they're a baby. They might regress when they're a toddler, might have bad dreams or sleepwalk when they're a big kid, and they might have trouble falling to sleep when they're a teenager. And this is, from talking to lots of moms, this is just true in the same way that you have some kids that are a little harder to feed because they're pickier about this and their stomach gets upset with this. And so if you sort of like accept the kids that you're given and say, okay, sleep maybe for this kid is always going to be a challenge. So what systems can I put in place, and what routines and what self-care for myself can I put in place so that, you know, we're always aiming for good sleep habits, but we're not expecting perfection. I think those are like two different things. Like you guys know, if you listen to the Mom Hour, I'm like very structured. I'm very routine oriented, but that's because it kind of creates a calm for me as a mom. I don't expect that all of that routine and structure is going to result in perfect sleepers or perfect eaters or perfect, you know, homework doers or whatever the thing is. So I think sometimes it's about lowering our expectations. I do think that regression in toddlers and preschoolers is so much more psychological, right? It's so much more behavioral. With a newborn, you just need them to sleep, and you just need them to figure out how to like put themselves back to sleep. There's not so much behavioral psychology going into it. Whereas the 18-month-old or the 3-year-old can really like, you can be going round and round in circles about, I need another glass of water, or I'm afraid, and there's nighttime fears, and there's all kinds of things that go into that. And I mean, I don't know if I have answers to that so much as solidarity. I think one tip I always give is to nominate the least desirable parent to do the frustrating part of night waking. So if a kid really wants mommy or is really got mommy wrapped around their little finger when it comes to waking up at night, then you can make daddy the de facto, because then you're responding to their fears and you're making sure they feel heard and understood, but
such a good idea.
You're not rewarding them with the one they really want. So we've used that over and over again. It's like, okay, you can have a parent come check on you or come tuck you in again, but it's not going to be the one you want.
Favorite one.
Yeah, it is.
That's
I use that
idea.
strategy all the time. With my big kids even. And I will sometimes say when I tuck them in, okay, if there's any calling out, that's what we say. Like, if you're calling out tonight, it's going to be dad because mom's on a break. And then they're like, oh, it's not really worth it.
That is so smart. I love that so much.
That's a total mom hack right there. I'm writing that one down.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. And I don't mean to say that all dads are the least desirable parent, because sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes
I
they
feel
want
like I
daddy,
am.
and
Like, maybe they want, maybe I should go in there.
Yeah.
Dang it.
I know.
I remember one time our pediatrician said something to me because my kid was doing the same thing. He was 2.5 and not sleeping through the night. And I was like, what is wrong? He still wakes up once or twice every single night. And she just said, don't you wake up in the night sometimes? Like, don't you have restful sleep? Don't you wake up to go to the bathroom or wake up because you're thirsty, or you just like have a disturbing dream or something, and then you go back to sleep and you know how to get yourself back to sleep? And that just changed my perspective, because I just realized, oh, okay, they're doing what I'm doing, but they just need my help to kind of figure it out and help them through what I already know how to do. And that really changed it for me.
Totally. Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think that's true all the way from little babies up through big kids. And so if you think about like sleep being a skill that you're teaching them over time, just like you're teaching them to talk and to write their name, it's an acquired skill. It's not like something that is, it's not a light switch that gets flipped on or off, like you were saying, Maren, where like they sleep through the night and then they don't, so it's broken. Right. I think it's more of a skill set, and that is why I sleep trained my babies, and why I did try to have some structure, because I wanted them to have those skills. But at the same time, with some kids, you just can't expect it to play out perfectly.
It's so true. I completely agree.
So the other most common answer we got, and this might have been our most common answer of all of like the things that moms are stressing out about, was SIDS, and just this fear of something terrible happening to our kids in the night. I mean, we all live in constant fear of this, to the point where they could be sleeping fine through the night and I'm waking myself up, right?
Yeah,
to check on them. So what are your thoughts on this, or like your words of encouragement for the moms that are freaking out about this? Because obviously you're past the point of SIDS now with your kids.
I am, but it doesn't go away. The ability to imagine the unthinkable happening to your baby and your kids does not go away. You know, I think I would say a couple of things. One, that brand new moms in the postpartum period is like just rife with opportunities for our own anxieties to get the better of us. And that's everything from, you know, some basic, baby blues and normal worries to full-blown postpartum mood disorders like depression and anxiety. And I'm not saying that the mom who worries about SIDS has postpartum anxiety necessarily, but I do think that babies in general are safer than they've ever been. We have more knowledge and tools to keep our babies safe than we ever have. So I think I would say to moms whose worries are keeping them up at night, that to really take a look at their own self-care and their own coping mechanisms with those worries. Because of course we all have the worries, right? When they start to get in the way of our ability to enjoy our kids and enjoy our baby and feel good during the day, I think that's when it can be time to look into our own anxieties. Does that make sense? So, yeah.
100%. I love that so much.
No, I think, and there's lots of ways to do that. So I'm not telling everybody to run out and get therapy or get medication, but talk to your pediatrician so you understand the real risks and the relative risk and talk to other moms, listen to podcasts that kind of normalize those fears so that you can separate actual risk from what might be a little bit of your own fears and anxieties running away with you a little bit, and just know that there are tools to help with that.
I love that. What podcasts would you recommend as far as that goes? I mean, just listening to other mom podcasts about it, or what are you referring to on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, we did an interview on the Mom Hour with an author named Kate Rope, who wrote a book called Strong as a Mother, which is about, it's about taking care of ourselves as new moms. It's not just about postpartum mood disorders, but it is a powerful, if you're interested at all in what happens chemically to the brain in that postpartum period and why we all feel a little bit like just unmoored from
psycho.
Yeah, exactly. That is a great interview. And then in your show notes, if I think of anything as we talk, we can link up some resources as well. But that would be a good one to listen to just because she's a fantastic resource and her book is great. And then in terms of entire podcast devoted to maternal mental health, I'll have to think on that. But I think anything that makes you feel less alone and like your worries are normal, and also that there's support for you to deal with them if they're becoming too much, I think is great. And that can come in a lot of forms.
I love that. I actually suffer from postpartum anxiety, so I'm like totally soaking in everything you're saying and writing notes over here.
I know, we're like in this right now, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Well, I feel like we could talk about sleep for literally another hour. But let's move on to toddler behavior. Some of my favorite responses, or I guess just the ones that I feel like resonated the most with the overall feeling we were getting, were, I feel like I need an anger management class for my 3-year-old. My toddler gets mad so easily and yells all the time. How do I help him become a nice person? Pushing, shoving, overall meanness. It stresses me out so much. How do I make it stop? And I can relate to these right now. We've recently had this pop up with our boys. Like, they've suddenly started getting aggressive with each other. And I'm like, are they just going to be mean to each other? So I feel like this is just, I mean, is this, what do you have to say about this? Is violent, loud, anger behavior going to go away on its own? Should we be worried about it? What would you say about this?
Yeah, so I think I'd start almost similarly with sleep, which is find a trusted resource or your pediatrician on what is typical developmental behaviors with social emotional stuff for toddlers. And I think you will find that, yes, it is all normal. Now, there's like a huge range of how that plays out. Some kids do get aggressive or violent or have a lot of anger. Some it manifests different ways by crying or tantruming or even being withdrawn or shy. But kids at this age are like a bundle of emotions, right? And I think one of the things that has helped me over the years is separating emotions from behavior. And that, what I mean by that is, I always want my kids to know that their big feelings are okay, even the ugly feelings, even being super, super mad at someone you love, or, you know, so mad that you want to punch or kick something, or, you know, so sad that you want to lie down on the floor and cry for an hour. That those big emotions, it's actually really healthy for people of all ages, but in particular, when they don't have the communication skills or the other, you know, coping skills, it's really, I think, important and healthy for them to know that those feelings are okay and those feelings don't make them bad. Sometimes kids get afraid. I always tell moms, like, no kid wants to lose control and have a tantrum in the middle of Target. Like, a kid does not wake up in the morning and think that would be fun. They are struggling in that moment. Right. So I think as moms, if we can, I always, like, my mantra, it's not really a mantra because I'm saying it here for the first time, but if there was a mantra, it would be to allow the emotions and then set limits on the behavior. Now, that looks different as kids get older. So setting a limit on behavior would mean you can be really, really mad at your brother or at me or at your dad, but you may not hit, because in our family we don't hit. So you're separating the emotions that are not only okay, but welcome. Because if they can't have big feelings in the safety of their home, where can they have them? Right. So the big emotions are okay. And even the display of big emotions, like tears, are okay. Yeah. Now, if you're screaming in my ear and I'm holding you and you're screaming so hard that my ear hurts, well, now that's a behavior that I need to set a limit, because I don't want you to hurt me, right? So I can say,
my hearing.
Yeah. Right. So I can say, I need to put you down because the screaming is too loud for my ear, but I'm right here and I understand how upset you are. And if I can rub your back or sit with you, or if you can quiet your volume a little bit, then I can pick you back up and I can hold you. So I'm not punishing a kid for having a tantrum, but I am still setting a limit because I don't want him to scream in my ear. I don't want him to hit me while I'm holding him. So that has always been a helpful distinction to me. As kids get older, then the limits on behavior can even get more, you can have higher expectations for what is acceptable behavior. And you can always say that behavior is not acceptable, but at the same time, you're allowing the big feelings. So that's kind of been helpful for me with toddlers. In terms of the question, are they always going to be like this? I mean, I feel like the blanket answer is no for everything, for sleep, for toddler behavior. Like there's so many phases they go in and out of. And just when you think a kid's going to be like this forever, they're not going to sleep through the night ever. The two brothers will never, ever get along. I think all you have to do is talk to moms of adult kids, right? Like ask moms of adult kids what their kids were like as littles. And it's amazing. It's really inspiring, I think, to hear kid transformation stories. My daughter was super, super shy and reserved until she was 5 or 6. I mean, not just when she was a little toddler, and is so outgoing now. So like talk to more seasoned moms and hear the stories of kids who came out of those phases, I think is just always really helpful.
I love that too, because I used to take tantrums so personally. Like, I've done all these things for you, and now you're sitting here giving me the hardest time in the middle of Target or whatever it is. And I think how you responded, like in that example you were talking about with your kid yelling in your ear, I just think you're setting your personal feelings aside and you're being really just, what's the word? Like stoic, like not giving any emotion, your own emotions to it. And you're just allowing yourself to not take it personally. You're just helping them get through the tantrum. And it's nothing on you. Story. It's just,
no, it's nothing on you. And I think that really helps with public parenting. Like if you're having a tantrum, if your kid is having a tantrum in public. Now, I'm not going to say I've never lost my temper in public with my kids, because I totally have. But if you think about if you see a kid just losing their mind and a parent who is lovingly there but kind of detached, not ignoring it with steam coming out of their ears, but like just kind of like, well, this is happening. Like that's the mom we all aspire to be, right? Like, whereas like if you see a mom screaming at her kid in the Target and the kid is screaming, that mom is having a hard time, right? So like the person having the tantrum is having a hard time. The kid is having a hard time. That's another one. I didn't make this up, but somebody else said it. Like if you can reframe like my kid is giving me a hard time and turn that into my kid is having a hard time and needs my help. And that is the same for moms. Like moms have tantrums too. But if we can be the adult, and recognize that the tantrum is not a reflection on us, like you said, Aubrey, it's not something to take personally. They are having a hard time. We may be more or less equipped to help them in that moment. I mean, I have times when I'm very attentive and loving and can see a tantrum all the way through and really support them. And I have other times where I'm like, well, you just need to cry because we got to get somewhere. So
I got to step away from this right now.
Right. But in either case, it's not about me. It's not a reflection on me and my parenting. It's just it's their job.
Yeah, totally. I love that.
I cannot agree more. I feel like there's nothing we can do that's more important than validating our kids. And even in those hard moments, we are still that one person there to validate them. And so however we can muster up the strength to try and see it from their perspective, I feel it's so important. I love that.
I think a lot of people misunderstand what you just said and think it means we can let them do whatever they want or get away with anything.
Right.
And I think that's
we're validating their emotions, not their behavior. And I love that distinction.
Right. And I think that's where that distinction helps. Because even in the midst of a tantrum, you can have a tantrum and yell unkind words. I mean, a 4 or 5-year-old might say they hate you and you're the worst mom, and that might be a limit that you want to address. I have sometimes just it's not even a battle I've been willing to fight in the minute, but you might say, you can be really mad, but we don't say things like that. So I need to, you need to limit that behavior. So I think that distinction is helpful no matter what the situation.
Love that.
What was your funny story you were going to share?
Just that I have a very loud and very emotional third child who has had, tantrums from the beginning. And I've gotten much better about, not taking them personally. But I always think about my neighbors because the houses are pretty close together where I live. And she is loud. And I've always thought to myself, okay, I think if it were me and I only heard a kid screaming like this, I would probably not be as concerned as if I also heard grown-ups yelling. Do you know what I mean? Like if I were the neighbor and I heard this family where everyone was screaming all the time at each other, parents at each other, parents at kids, I might think, gosh, I hope everything's okay over there. And so I tell myself, my rationalization is the only one they ever hear screaming is her. My voice is calm. I'm not yelling back. I'm not raising my voice. So therefore, I think probably they won't call Child Protective Services on me.
That's awesome. Oh, man, I love that. Great advice. Oh, man, I'm writing this down in my head. I'm going to go back and listen to this a few times.
I know, seriously.
The overwhelming response that we got on the topic of toddler behavior was actually more in regards to the moms feeling guilty about their behavior. Like, I feel like what we've said really can tie into this, but feeling guilty when they completely lose their cool and feeling like they're just a terrible mother. And it really is a tough situation when you've done that and then you realize, okay, like I really did lose my cool. So, I mean, what advice do you,
I love that she said, moms can have temper tantrums too. Even hearing that, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be just fine. It was a little temper tantrum, and I'm good. Like, I don't know.
Think about what we're modeling for our kids, right? Like we are also showing our kids that we have real emotions, but also that real emotions aren't scary, and that if we have lost our cool, if we've hurt somebody's feelings or said something we didn't mean to, that there's a way to make reparations from that. So I think it's a great thing for kids to hear us say, wow, mommy was really, really mad and I yelled. I need to take a break for a couple minutes and then we can talk more about this. Or you don't even say any of that if they're really, really little. But they see you regain composure. They see you try again and, and try your best. So all of that I think is okay. I also think that this is a big argument for just regular self-care. I mean, I think when we're taking care of ourselves in a proactive way and getting a break, if we're the primary at-home parent for our kids, making sure that we're getting a break, that we're getting rest wherever and however possible, that we're talking to somebody we trust, whether it's, whoever it is, proactively, not waiting, until we've had the tantrum, but proactively, then I think you notice those meltdowns are fewer and farther between. But everybody has them. And if anybody tells you that they haven't ever freaked out at their kids and yelled and then they just haven't yet, or they're lying. Our very first episode of the Mom Hour was about that. Like literally episode 1 was about what to do and when we lose our cool with our kids. And we talked about apologizing to our kids, especially the older ones, and helping them see just what grown-ups do when they lose their cool and how they make it better if they've hurt somebody. So yeah.
I love that. And normalizing that's, it's not okay, but it's also common and it's okay to...
It's human.
Show it, yes.
Yeah, it's human. And it's okay is maybe not the right word, but it's human to mess up and it's human to accidentally hurt people and it's human to lose control or feel like you're losing control. And so for our kids to see that, and if it's happening so consistently that you just feel out of control all the time, I'm going to go back to what I said about, getting help with when you're feeling that out of control, getting help in some way because there is help out there.
Totally.
Well, I feel like it is, we can kind of eliminate that mom guilt over if you have lost your cool and then you handled it well and you apologize to them. I don't feel like you need to feel guilty if you handled it correctly because like you said, you're teaching them. You're teaching them how to handle it when they lose their cool too. And that's the only way they'll ever learn is watching you. Sometimes they have to learn the hard way,
Totally.
Right.
Well, that's awesome. Anything else that you freaked out about in the toddler years that you wish you wouldn't have?
I do want to recommend my favorite resource for toddler parenting, and that is Dr. Laura Markham, who has a site called ahaparenting.com. I'm not like affiliated with her in any way. She has no idea who I am, but I've just mentioned her a million times on our podcast. And there's other writers out there, but I think toddlers are really, really hard. And for me, as someone who likes information and kind of understanding how things work and all that they're doing developmentally, they've got so much. It really helps me adjust my expectations to really what is a 2.5-year-old really capable of. They're not capable of sharing. They're not capable of reciprocal relationships. We have all these adult expectations on what a 2.5-year-old should be able to do. And not only are they often too high, it's sometimes damaging, because then we're getting into power struggles over something that a kid is not capable of doing. It would be like yelling at your 6-month-old for peeing in their diaper. Like, you just can't, like, it's not something you could expect of them. And so, I would recommend that resource, I think, as kind of a final thought on toddlers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's so good. Just so good. So our last topic we were going to hit on is screen time. And so many moms ask questions along the lines of, how much is really too much? Or, I'm worried I'm not finding the right balance. Or, how do I get my kids to want to do other activities? So, and this is such a loaded topic, I feel, especially right now. But what are your thoughts on screen time? There's so many studies out there that make me terrified of any screen time at all. And then there are things out there that make me feel like it's a good resource. So what are your thoughts on this?
Okay. Yeah. This is like so big, and it changes over time, right? Like, I think when I was a mom of really little kids, what I tried to do was have the use of screens be something that aided me as a mom in doing the other things that I thought were important to our family. So, for example, if I decided to put on a 30-minute show every day so that I could cook dinner, because being together as a family at dinner time was something that was of value to me, I was using the screen time as a way to kind of create this family rhythm and family values that were important to me. What I tried to avoid, and this is just what I tried to do. It's not that I was perfect at it. I tried to steer away from habits where handing over a screen or a tablet was my first response to any discomfort in a kid. So what I mean by that is, like, you're waiting in the waiting room, you're in traffic. I tried to reserve screens to kind of the dire circumstances, or to things that were kind of a planned part of our rhythm, like the dinner making example. I don't think screens are bad. I wasn't totally screen free with any of my kids. But I think I tried to see it kind of holistically in, like, why do I need the kids on the iPad right now? Is it because I have a work call and this is like a planned part of the day, and we know this is where I'm going to use screens for this, and that's what we're going to do, in which case I don't feel guilty about it. Like, it is a tool that I have to get through this day that I have. I mean, we abundantly use screens for things like travel, when kids were homesick and all of that. And I did withhold. I was a little bit more on the conservative side on a daily basis, because I really wanted it to be a little bit special so that it could work for me when I decided it was time to hand over an iPad. So that's kind of one thought. Again, I come down to, like, I want moms to feel fulfilled and mentally strong and healthy as much as possible. So if some screen time allows you to do your hair and take your shower, then that may be the best screen time well spent that day. So if we're passively handing over a device anytime that a kid is feeling squirrely, I think that's where I would look at, like, maybe there's something we can do so that this kid gets more time running around outside, or that I know a lot of families struggle with kind of being inconsistent about screens. And that's where I think like routines and traditions and rituals are your friends. So I can say, like, my kids beg to watch a show. I can say, no, we don't watch shows on the weekdays, but you have a Friday night movie to look forward to. Or we're going to have a long drive to grandma and grandpa's this weekend and you can do all the iPad you want. So like almost having like the when kids can come to expect it built in, that takes a while. You're not going to do that right out of the gate. But I do find that it helps when you have this, like, how much is too much? Or am I like, one week we were all over the place and the next week we cracked down. And so anytime for me, my kids know what to expect. And I know what to expect, then I can feel really good saying no when it's time to say no. And I can feel zero guilt having screens when I've decided, that's how. But you know what? As I hear myself talk, I'm hearing like Megan, my co-host, who is totally not this way. Like, she doesn't think like, okay, what's the structure I'm going to put in place around this, which is totally how my brain works. So if there's moms out there that are more like Megan, that's totally okay too. Like, you can also go by gut and intuition and feeling. And then a final thought on screens is, we make it sound like all screens are created equal. And as my kids get older, I've just seen so much really cool opportunities around watching stuff together as a family.
Right.
We watch shows together as a family now, like Amazing Race or MasterChef Junior. There are games now, iPad and computer games that my kids are playing where they're coding and like creating art and stuff like that. So I think when kids are really tiny, obviously the screen is mostly like a babysitter. So I would, you want to make sure that the content is safe, and you probably want to limit consumption to as much as you can, given your circumstances. But then once kids are getting a little bit older, I think there's some really cool ways to think about technology that is not just, I need to make dinner, so here's your electronic babysitter, but like, now I'm in this phase where I want to be proactively choosing cool technology and cool screen time stuff that my kids can do. And then, sometimes they just play Minecraft and zone out too. That's okay too. But I think it's ongoing. I have another great book to recommend, and I would say this is for like elementary school and up, but it's still awesome. And it's called Screenwise. You guys can link it up. It's by an author named Devorah Heitner. We also had her on our show, and she just has such a positive outlook about kids and technology that's not fear-based, and much more about, as parents, how can we like mentor our kids? Because it's not going away. Like, even if you're totally screen-free, the world is not going to change. So we are raising these digital natives who will know how to work stuff better than we do by the time they're in middle school. So rather than being fearful about it, this book, Screenwise, I think is takes a really positive look at that and how we can, maybe even expose them to screens even earlier than we thought, but do it with them, do it together, and with an eye toward kind of mentoring them, instead of just always being about, I got to protect this and block this and, parent password protect this. And there's a time and place for that too, but a lot of it is about doing it with them and experiencing it with them.
I love that too, because then it's like having your screen be not being the slave to your screen, but having the screen be the slave to you. You don't want it. You don't want to be a slave to it all.
Yeah, totally.
But have it work for you.
Totally.
Love that. Yeah, I think if I were to summarize up everything you said, it would just to be really intentional about screen time. Like, there is an intent, whether it's to help benefit you to be a better mom, or whether it's to benefit your children so that they can consume something that's actually worthwhile.
Yeah.
I just feel like if you're intentional about it, then you don't need to feel bad about it.
And also, let's say this, if you are in a season of life where the only way to get through the day is to hand your phone to the car seat in the back seat, that season will end. And you don't need to feel guilty about that either. Most likely, if you're listening to this podcast and wanting to be a better mom, you're already doing it. Just by worrying about it, you're doing it. And there are seasons of life where you're going to lean really heavily on screens. And for most of us, it's a season of a new baby or a move or a husband who's traveling all the time. It's not going to last forever. So we're not always the mom we want to be in all areas all the time, right? Duh. So if
totally.
I think
yourself some grace.
Yes, be intentional. And this is an area where I think I was particularly conservative and intentional. So I hope it doesn't come across as like that's the only way to be. Because if you're in the season of life where everyone is on an iPad all the time, I have no judgment about that, because I know you're doing the best you can,
right.
and that it's not going to last forever.
Perfect.
Totally.
Totally true. I have a new baby, so I can resonate with this right now.
Yeah. I love that.
Well, before we end, let's chat about mom guilt in general, because that's just it. We feel so worried about the decisions we make for our children constantly. And, I feel like in a world where everything is posted, every opinion is online for everyone to see, we see the good, bad, and the ugly and the bad things that happen to kids because of something a parent decided to do more often than we would if we weren't in this world where technology really is so rampant. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it causes us to overanalyze and stress out a lot more than I think moms of the past did.
Yes, I do. I think there's two sides to it. I do think we also have more opportunity to get information and connect with people because of technology and social media. But then the darker flip side is comparison and worry and guilt. And I think, I think the sooner that we can become better curators of the media that we're consuming, it sounds so simple, but Megan and I always say, if you're scrolling past something regularly that makes you feel bad about yourself, you can opt out of that. You can unfollow, you can get out of that entire platform or that entire Facebook group or that entire online community. And sometimes what happens, I think, is we don't even realize that we have that low level guilt or anxiety or just that yucky feeling of looking at this one person's Instagram feed. So it is, I think, important to kind of pay attention to the way we feel when we consume different kinds of media. And this is not to say like Instagram's bad or Facebook groups are bad, because there are others that can totally lift us up. But again, when it comes to modeling for our kids, I think what we want our kids to do when they get online is to make good choices about who they interact with and what kind of content they consume. And that starts with us. So it's not the only answer to losing mom guilt, but like you said, it's so rampant that I think it's a big part of it.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, how can we feel more confident as moms, and how can we experience less guilt? What have you learned? I mean, you're more seasoned than us, and what have you learned about feeling more confident in your decisions and just freaking out less? I mean, maybe you do still freak out just as much. I don't know. I just want to hear where you're at since you're 10 years ahead of us,
Yeah. I mean, I think time does really help. I think when you start to, like, we started this episode talking about the things we shouldn't have freaked out about series. You guys, even as young as your kids are, you guys have things that you now can look back and say, oh my gosh, I thought that was the end of the world and it turned out okay. Megan shared in one of our New Year episodes that she had a yoga teacher who put them through this super intense series of poses and they had to hold it forever. And then at the end, the teacher was like, well, that was hard, but we're okay. And we laughed and we thought the more you can have that moment where you say, holy moly, I can't believe we got through that. I can't believe I survived 2 babies under, Irish twins for the first 2 years. And so time does help. You realize that you are capable and resilient. You also realize that you're not going to break or mess up your kids with every decision that you make. And some of that just takes time. I always recommend that moms, if possible, surround themselves with moms in different stages, that you're hanging out virtually online or in person with more seasoned moms whenever possible, because you see it play out. You see that their confident second grader was once a total basket case who got in trouble at preschool every day. And it's not in that scenario, it's not a guarantee that your basket case preschooler is also going to be a confident second grader. The through line isn't that literal, but
it gives you hope.
It does give you hope. And it allows you to see that mom came through the other side of that. And you can say oh my gosh, you're here, you're still standing. So the more we can surround ourselves with stories and real life examples, I think, of moms doing the best and things turning out okay, I think really does help. I think it's great for new moms to come together and form a tribe, but it can become a little bit of an echo chamber when everybedy's overanalyzing, everybody's comparing, and everybody's worrying. So I don't know if there's a magic answer for losing the guilt and, being more confident in our decisions, but for sure, when we surround ourselves And I think that includes surrounding yourself with people who are not in the motherhood game, right? Like that's the other thing, that if you have set aside all hobbies and all pursuits and all relationships that don't relate to raising your kids, it can get pretty lonely and also boring because you're now only talking about babies and diapers. And so there's solidarity in that, yes, but there's also the risk that it becomes a little like self-fulfilling because now you just want to read about potty training because you've only talked about potty training today, and you forget that like once you had a whole life that didn't revolve around potty training. So I think that's another way to sort of like reduce the perceived importance of every decision is to make sure that you still have things in your life that are challenging and interesting outside of motherhood.
I love that. That's so true. Yeah. And I think having that example, like at first, I mean, I think almost every mom just kind of gets thrown into it, kind of like, here we go, they don't know everything. And I think having friends and even not just that, but who we're following, who we look up to, just having that as examples of like, this isn't going to last forever, like we're not going to be in the trenches forever, and seeing that kind of glimpse of what others have done or gone through and have succeeded in helps us to kind of get through those hard moments.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot out of following and talking to moms of teenagers and grown kids. And it makes me appreciate why people listen to our show who have kids quite a bit younger, because I do the same thing. Only I'm following people whose kids are getting ready to leave the house or who are in the intense years of high school, so it never really stops.
Yeah. In other words, listen to our podcast if you want moms, if you want solidarity in the trenches, and go listen to the Mom Hour to feel better about the future.
I think that's a good plan. I mean, it used to surprise us when people would say, "I'm just pregnant with my first child. I'm listening to your every episode," and we're like, "Really?" But I get it. I mean, it's wanting a peek into what's ahead, and also. Like Megan and I are the living examples that you will survive 8 kids.
That you've survived.
That we've survived. And, So, I think that's a good plan.
Honestly, I love listening to Megan talk about her teen kids. And I'm so far away from that, but it is so... I love listening to it. I don't know. It just, in a way, it almost removes me from what's going on in my little world, in my little circle for just long enough that it kind of does remove the stress of what's going on, because I'm just focusing so hard on what someone else's situation is, and it's so different from mine. And there really is something to be said about that. For sure.
No, I totally agree. And I'm the same. I mean, my kids aren't there yet, and I always love hearing her talk about her teenagers.
I love that. That's awesome.
So we'll just do a little lightning round, ask some questions that we like to ask every episode. Sometimes we ask ourselves, sometimes we ask our guests. But what's a mom win that you had this week? Something great or successful that really worked for you?
Doesn't have to be this week.
I'll give an example from older kid life, since that's what you guys are not experiencing. So my kids my older 2 take piano lessons, and I'm pretty hands-off about practicing. I sort of suggest it, and I let their teachers know that they have every opportunity to practice, but I don't have a practicing rule at home because I don't need one more thing to police. And so as such, my kids don't improve quite as fast as some kids whose parents make them practice. And they sometimes kind of get busted by their teachers. But the cool thing is, eventually the recital comes close, and I will see this thing kick in where they kind of realize, like, if I don't practice every day, I am not going to be ready for the recital, or I'm going to let my teacher down, or whatever. This internal motivation kicks in. And for me, when you have elementary school age kids, there's a lot that they can do on their own, but there's also a lot of reminding. You're reminding about the backpack, and you're reminding about the homework, and you're reminding. So I guess the mom win for me this week was seeing my oldest go from not practicing piano at all. I mean, throughout like her lessons, she'll sit down and she'll do stuff. And every week she improves a little, to where we're like a week out from the recital, and she said, I'm going to practice twice a day for the next week. And she did. And her piano piece sounds so good. And for me, it's so much more rewarding to see that than if I had put her on a schedule and a structure and said, you have to practice 20 minutes every night. the piano piece would still sound good, but it wouldn't have come from her deciding she could do that. And then seeing her sit down twice a day for 15 or 20 minutes and struggle with this piece that will now sound really good, and she'll feel super proud. And so that is just a little example, but I see that kind of thing all the time with my kids because I have to let it be their idea. Otherwise, it's just, they're going to need me forever.
Well, and let it be their struggle that they overcame. That's so. And
if she hadn't practiced and had failed at the recital, that would be okay too. Like I have to be okay with like if she hadn't gotten it together and she didn't do very well at the recital, I have to sit there at the recital and be okay. And I would be okay with that. I mean, I would be cringing a little bit and there would be other parents judging me, but it would still have to be okay, I think.
Totally. I played the piano, and so it's so funny to be on the flip side of like what the moms are thinking, from growing up, because practicing is hard, and I just think I love that. I think that's
and the other side is I really want my kids to take piano, and so that was the other part of my decision is I was afraid that if I pushed too hard on practicing, they would hate it and they'd quit. So part of it is actually because I love the fact that they're in piano lessons that I don't push so hard on the practice. I'd rather they play for a few years and maybe not get as good, but have that foundation than push them so hard that they quit after a year. But you never know. I don't know if that's the right decision. No idea.
I love that though, because you're allowing them to learn to love it on their own without being forced. That's awesome.
Well, we'll go with that, hopefully.
Okay, Sarah, last question. So what is something you do as self-care every day?
I'm going to say I put myself to bed as soon as I get tired. And that is sleep now that I can get it is an incredible form of self-care. And the flip side of that is I get up every morning really early and I read before the kids get up. Now, I have heard that was a good strategy for having me time for 10 years, 11 years. I didn't start doing that, just so we're being honest. I didn't start actually getting up before my kids until about 2 or 3 years ago. So like 8 years into parenting, I knew that was a good idea.
That's helpful.
I knew it was your time that you could have your coffee and make your list and read. And I knew that there were moms out there doing it. And I'm a morning person, actually. I don't have a hard time getting up in the morning. But when you've been up 50 times in the night, nobody's a morning person. Like no one wants to get up at 5:30. So
it's just like one long day when you've got little tiny.
It is, exactly. So I'm saying that's a form of self-care for me now, which is to go to bed early. And I do love to go to bed like indulgently early. I'll go to bed at like 8:30 or 9 sometimes. Like I'm like a big fan of sleep. Yeah. And then I do get up early and I read in the mornings when I have my coffee and I usually read, but sometimes I might look at my list for the day or journal or something. But that took a long time. That took 7 or 8 years into parenting where that was feasible for me.
Okay, follow-up question. What are you... I know, right? What are you reading right now?
I just finished a book called I Miss You When I Blink, which is a book of essays by Mary Laura Philippot, I think is how you say her last name. I was seeing the book come up by a lot of writers that I follow. And so I just finished that this morning and we can link to it. It's not directly about motherhood, but she is a mother and it's a really digestible read because the essays are short. So if you're like in short attention span,
that would be me.
That is a great one. So I'll give that to you guys. You can link it up.
Cool. Well, I love how you say it took a long time to get there because we set all these goals and we hear all these people doing all of these things. And then I will just sit there and say, I can't. How are they doing it? And
Sharon's over here making pancakes at 12:30 a.m. last night.
I know, my 2-year-old was up in the night asking for pancakes.
Oh my gosh.
She's such a nice mom, whipping up like gourmet breakfast at 1 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, I can barely provide for my 3 kids and get in the shower every day.
That's why
so
it's just
how
one
are
long
people
day.
getting up so early? But I just, if there's anything I want our moms to get out of this episode, it's just what you just said, that it takes a long time. Just give yourself yourself time.
Yeah.
For things to work out the way. I mean, just give things time to work out. I feel
agree.
and allow and embrace
Megan
the season
sometimes. Yeah, Megan still sometimes says that to me because I will say something like, "Oh my gosh, my big kids don't do enough chores, or like, I haven't figured out like allowances yet. And Megan will be like, you got time. Like, and so I need to hear it too. You know, I think,
I
no,
love
like,
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're good. We got this.
Yeah, I love her perspectives on that too.
Yes.
Seriously, can you come on every single week and do a segment?
We're over here taking notes, taking notes for ourselves of everything you've said. You've been amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Well, tell our listeners where they can find you. Obviously, the Mom Hour podcast, but where else?
Yeah, so the Mom Hour is available wherever you get your podcasts. I think that is the best way to get to know us. If you go to themomhour.com, we have a page for new listeners that just says new, start here. And that is a great entry point into our podcast if you're looking for a particular age or stage. And then we're on social media everywhere at the Mom Hour. So I would say we're most active on Instagram. And we love hearing from new listeners. So if you found us through the Mamahood, send us an email or leave us a comment and let us know that's how you came to our show, because we love hearing that as well. So yeah, we're pretty easy to find. That's our main thing. That's what we do. So we're just the Mom Hour.
Perfect. We love you guys. We look up to you guys, and all your advice, we're just soaking in. So thank you so, so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on this show, Sarah. We hope that you enjoyed this episode today. If you did, would you scroll down and do us a favor and leave us a quick review? It helps us to connect with more mamas like you. Also, feel free to come and join us on Instagram at the.mamahood, or email us at themamahoodpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, just let us know what you think. We love you. We're so grateful for your friendship. We hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. This has been so fun for us, and we will talk to you soon.